Once you've opened NESmaker, click on New Project. We're going to choose the Create Blank Tile Sets option, and we're going to give the folder for our graphics a name. My suggestion is something like Maze Tutorial _practice. You can use camel case or underscores instead of space, but don't use any special characters. Try and keep it all alphanumeric. And for our starting module, we want to choose Maze Base 456. Once we have that loaded, hit OK. And that's going to load our project with all of the scripts and settings that we need for this particular type of game that we're going to create. The first thing that we'll do from there is we're going to load in pre-existing tile sets for graphics that we've already created for this project. So go to the little gear bar at the top of the screen. This is your project settings. And go to the Tile Sets tab. There you're going to see a button that says Import. You can use this to import existing tile set assets that you've exported from another project. It's going to give you a warning that this is going to overwrite all tile sets that are currently in use. Yes, we're sure. We've created a folder you should have downloaded from where you got this module. I've downloaded mine to the desktop, and it's called Maze Tutorial Resources. And you'll see one of the zip files is called Maze Tutorial Tile Sets. Click on that and press Open. And it has now loaded those tile sets into this project. Close this window. Now we'll move over to our project hierarchy, which is this white space on the left side of the tool. And we're going to click on the plus sign next to the project node. Now we can see all of the tools and resources that make up this current project. I'm going to right click on Game Objects. I'm going to import all game objects. You'll see in that same folder that there's a zip file called Maze Tutorial GameObjects.zip. Click on that and hit Open. If you hit the plus sign next to Game Object right now, you'll see that a player has loaded in. It's showing the wrong colors, but we'll deal with that in a second. Open up the node for palettes. You can see that you've got palette groups and all of your tile palettes. Right-click on all palettes, and you'll see an import button. You'll see one of these zip files is called Maze Tutorial _palettes. Not the monster palettes, but palettes. Click on that and press Open. And if you open that node, you'll now see that the top two palettes are loaded with data. If I click on one of them, you can see the colors that are associated with that palette. Click on the second one, you can see the colors that are associated with that palette. To close these nodes, you can click on the minus sign. Now we're going to open the Monster Graphics Banks. Click on the plus sign next to the Monster Graphic Banks node. Click on the plus sign next to the Graphics Bank 0 node. Right-click on Monsters. We're going to import all monsters. You see we've got Maze Tutorial _monsters. Go ahead and open that. If we click on the node, we'll see that we have an alien. Again, it's the wrong color, but we're going to take care of that right now. You can minimize the Monster Graphic Banks node. Open up the Monster Palettes node. You can see it says All Monster Palettes. Right-click on that and Import. And we're going to import Maze Game Tutorial Monster Palettes.zip. If we look at those palettes, we'll see that it has three palettes defined at the top. One called Player Pal 0, one called Player Pal 1, and one called Alien Palette. Now, if you were to go back and look at either your game object for your player or your monster palette for your alien and open it up, you'll see that it reflects the new palettes that we've drawn in instead of the ones that it was showing. Next, we're going to load in the sound file. This is not bundled with this project, but it's loaded with this version of NESmaker. So to find it, we're going to right-click on sound, import FamiTracker TXT, and we're going to navigate to wherever your NESmaker folder is. Then we're going to navigate to Tutorial Assets, 4.5.x Beta Tutorials, Sound, and you'll see a text file. This is some default songs and sound effects that were provided by the NESmaker community for this release. Hit open, and now they're part of your project. Next, we're going to add some inputs. If we go to the input editor, and we go up to the input linker menu, we can import input links. Now, right now, we're in that tutorial assets folder, so we have to return back to our maze game folder. For me, that's on my desktop. Maze tutorial resources, maze tutorial inputs. And what that has done is it is loaded in. If I press the plus sign next to the scripts node, press the plus sign next to the input scripts node, it has loaded a handful of scripts that make this maze game function, and it has applied them to different inputs on the controller. We've now loaded in all of the assets that we need to load in to start making this game work. So let's open up our overworld node. Here you'll see map screens. Now, don't really think about this literally as an overworld and an underworld. What you have is two different maps, and you can use them however you want to use them. You don't have to make the starting screen 0, 0. It doesn't have to be an overworld and a dungeon type scenario at all. In fact, you could use one map completely for special screens or cutscene data, and the other for gameplay. For us, we are just going to pick an arbitrary screen. I'm just going to pick this one here, which is, if I look up at the top of the screen, 3, 3, 3 in the X direction, 3 in the Y direction. You can choose any screen that you'd like. And you'll see I'm now in a interface that shows me what the screen is going to look like. It also shows me my tile set. It shows me my palettes. It shows me any tiles that I've loaded, which I haven't for this project. It shows me the collision data that's available to me in this module so far. And it's got a few windows that that will turn this into a slightly different view for me to see different things. For instance, collision data on this screen. If I ever want to go back to the map, I can click on Overworld. I can get back to that screen by double clicking on it. If I have my mouse hovered over that and I press the plus sign, I can zoom out, which will allow me to see other screens adjacent to the screen if I've created some. If I hit minus, it'll zoom back in and it'll hide those screens, and I'll just see an outline of them. You'll see this better once we create multiple screens. We can use a lot of these drop-down menus to choose different options. For instance, I can go to palette and I can choose to load a different palette than this screen would use for the background tiles. I'm going to stay with palette 0. I can also go to tile layout and I can choose different tile sets and different tile set layouts. For this type of game, this tile layout is going to be just fine. I'll press OK. When I choose a different subpalette, you'll see that my tile set here changes colors. In order to place tiles onto the screen, I'll choose the subpalette that I want to use. If I want to place a single tile, I can grab a single tile. You can see that it's highlighted here. My cursor then shows that tile, and I can place it by clicking. If I want to place multiple tiles at one time, I go to my tile set, I hold shift, click and drag, and you'll see my cursor shows multiple tiles. I'm going to create a row of skee ball. We are creating a 8-bit arcade for our player to run around in. I'm going to leave a space around the outside for now, and we'll show you why in a second. Now I'm going to add a few arcade cabinets. I can hit escape while my mouse is over this canvas area, and you can see that the cursor goes away. The ghosted image of the cursor goes away. So now I can select a different set of tiles, and I'm going to place the arcade games along the top. However, I do have this modified bit, which will give it just a little bit more diversity, and I can start changing the colors. Now I probably want to keep all of the skee ball machines looking the same. However, these arcade cabinets should look different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to choose, I can choose this, and one way that I could do it is I could choose a sub palette and grab one of the tiles and replace it. But if all I'm doing is changing the color, there's an easier way. I'll hit escape so it gets rid of the ghosted image. If I move my mouse over a tile that I want to change, my Q, W, E, and R keys will change the sub palettes. Q, W, E, and R. So for instance, if I wanted to use sub palette 4 for this monitor, I could put my mouse over the tile that I want to change, press the R key, and it changes to that palette. If I want to make this whole cabinet right here sub palette 3, I press the E, I hold the E key, and it paints that entire tile. So I can go through and I can mix and match to give this a little bit of diversity. And now that just looks a little bit more interesting. Next, we're going to add some paths. In order to add paths, I'm going to go to All Graphics over in my hierarchy. I'm going to press the plus sign. I'm going to go to Path Info. When we loaded the tile sets, we already loaded up two looking paths. One that kind of looks like a solid wall, one that kind of looks like water. These came stock with this module. I don't have to do anything here. I could give it a collision type, but for right now, I'm just going to call it paths because we're going to manually paint collisions. So I'm going to give this a name, call it paths, and hit save. Now, if I go back to my overworld and I click on that screen, I'm going to tell this to use those paths by going to Screen Info, which is the button at the top of the screen. And you'll see right in the middle, it says Path Group. Right now it's set to nothing. We want to tell it that we want it to use paths on this screen. I'll hit OK. Now, when I place my mouse and I use the 1, 2, 3, or 4 key, it will start drawing paths. If I look at my tile layout, this row would be path 1, this row would be path 2, this row would be path 3, and this row would be path 4. And it would draw based on the correlating button that you pressed. If you press 1, it's going to draw this solid wall path. If I press 2, it'll draw this either water or path, dirt path. Now notice this is only good for tile set layouts that have path at the end of it. You can see some of them have no path. This one has a path, this one does not. This one does not. This one has half a path. These specifically have no path. This specifically has half a path but no HUD. So there are different types of layouts. With the one that we're using, we can use 1, 2, 3, and 4 to draw any of these paths. So I'm going to draw a wall by pressing 1 along the outside. So I'm clicking and dragging. Oops. If you happen to go off the screen, it will automatically place something at position 0. I'm attempting to use a trackpad, which is slowing me down a little bit. I'm going to get rid of these mistakes by just clicking on the top left tile and placing it in place. Now I can start adding a few arcade machines. So I'll add these two right here, and maybe I'll add another one right here. But I can see that I want to change that one to this stacked version, and I'll do the same thing across from it. This just gives it some symmetry. Now I'm going to add a few arcade cabinets, but instead of just drawing it, I'm going to show you how to copy and paste tiles. So I'm going to hit escape so that no tiles are selected. Now, I'm going to hold shift, click and drag over a few arcade cabinets. You can see it puts this white rectangle around them. If I hit Control C, the white rectangle goes away and it's copied to my clipboard. So I can hit Control V to paste those in place. I may want to put a few arcade cabinets along the wall. Like that. And now we have something that's starting to resemble a small arcade. There are a few things left that we want to add to this screen. One of them is our pickup, our collectible, which is going to be quarters. You're going to be collecting the quarters scattered around the arcade and staying away from evil aliens. So this doesn't look much like a quarter unless I make it silver. So I'm going to grab the quarter graphic and I'm going to place quarters randomly around the room. The other thing I've really got to think about is, where is the exit point to this room? So, and where is my character going to start? So if I imagine this to be where my character is going to start, and maybe up here is where my exit is, what I'll do is I have to figure out a tile to use for an exit tile. I'm just going to use this gray tile. So whenever I see that gray tile, I know it's going to be an exit. You might want to use stairs or a door, and that would be fine. But there you go. So we're going to use that as our exit. And the next thing we want to do is we want to place our character somewhere on this screen. So if I right click somewhere, I can place my player and we can see he showed up. Now he is showing slightly the wrong colors, and we'll fix that in one of the next steps. But what's great is now we actually have enough in here that this should work. I should be able to play this game, move my character around the screen. I have not set up any collision data yet, so I'll be able to walk right through walls, but we can test it to see if my inputs work, my game objects work, and if all my palettes and tiles load correctly. To test my project, I'm going to go to the top of the screen. There's a little button that says Export and Test. I'm going to click on that. It looks like a little closed NES. And that's going to run it in the assembler. That's going to assemble all the data and all the things that I put together. And it's going to turn it into a playable ROM file. Press a key and it's going to open it in the Messen emulator, which comes bundled with NESmaker. And I can see everything loaded pretty well. I can move. As I said, I haven't set up any collisions, so I'll be able to walk right through. And in Pac-Man fashion, if I go off the side of one of the screen, I show up on the other. If I go off the side of the screen, I show up on the other. We haven't told it what to do to stay in bounds, and we haven't told it what is solid, what's collectible, and what should warp us to another screen. So we'll do a few things more. The first thing is I want to add a HUD, and I want to start adding collision data. Since I have the overworld screen painter open, we'll start with collisions. What I have here is the different types of collision data that this module uses: walkable, solid, a hurt tile, a warp tile, a checkpoint, and a prize tile. So we're going to start adding these to the screen. First and foremost, we're going to add solid tiles. So I'm going to choose under this collision dropdown where it says solid. When we chose the module, that's what loaded in the scripts that work with these tile types. In order to add solid properties to a tile, I move over that tile. You can see its properties up here at the top of the screen. Right now, it's loaded as a walkable tile. So in order to change that, I'm going to hit the 0 key and it changes to solid, you can see. So I can go ahead and click and drag and change all these to solid. However, there's an easier way to make sure I get all of them. If I turn on this collision toggle, I can actually see the value of all these tiles. And now I can draw solid wherever I want a solid wall to be. This is a quick and easy way to add exactly the right collision data to exactly the right tiles. So all of these tiles should be 1s. And that will keep me constrained within those tiles. There are other types of tiles that we're going to add. Oh, missed this one. There are other type of tiles that we're going to add, but let's test that to see if now I collide with those solid tiles and it stops me. And it does. I must have missed a few. So let me check. If I go back to my collision, I can see that I missed these two right here. So I'll make sure it's on solid. And I'll grab those two. Next, I want to go and I want to make all of the quarters prizes. So I'm going to choose prize, and over everything that I want to disappear and give me a score value, I'm going to click on. Now, when I say disappear, what it's really going to do is it's going to turn it into a default tile, the 0, 0 tile. This one, that's what this script will do. So it's not actually disappearing, it's turning it into the floor tile and giving it the same properties as the floor tile. So now that I've got that loaded in, I should be able to start collecting the tiles. I must have missed adding that one, so I'll go back and check. It works. So let's check that one tile down here, and it looks like yes, I did miss that one. There you go. Okay, so now we've added that. We're also going to very soon add a warp tile to take us to the next screen. But first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to HUD and boxes, and I'm going to add some HUD elements. The first thing that I'm going to add is text that says lives. And then I can move X and Y around the screen until I get the word lives wherever I want it. The next thing I'm going to do is add the value of a variable. I'm going to add a number, and it's going to use the variable my lives. Keep in mind that you have to have correct capitalization. This is a variable that came with this particular module. It doesn't exist in all modules, but it does in this one. It has a max value of 1. That just means it has one place value. It can be 0 through 9. And I'm going to move that into place. Element number 2 in this module is going to be text, and it's going to say the word score. And then I can move that into the place where I want the score to be. And element number 3 is going to be another number represented by my score. Again, spelling is important. Max value is going to be 6. That doesn't mean that it's got a maximum value in it of 6. It means it's got 6 places. This module has a score that is good up to 6 places. Other ones are 4, 8. They could be anywhere between 0 and 8 places. This particular module uses 6 places. Now when I play my game, I start the game with 3 lives, a score of 0, and as I collect these quarters, you can see my score go up. Lastly, let's add some monsters and a warp to another screen. So I'm going to go to my screen. I need to add a monster group. In order to do that, I'm going to go to Monster Graphics Banks. I'm going to go to Graphic Bank 0 if it's not open already. And I'm going to click on Monster Groups. Here is where I'm going to choose the monsters I want in this monster group. This module only has one monster. So I'm going to call this Alien. And I'm going to hit save. And now you'll notice that I have a little plus sign and I can see that I've got a monster group for Alien. If I go to my overworld and I go to that screen, To be able to add that, I need to tell the screen what object it is able to load. So I go to screen info. We're only dealing with the day normal state. So I'm going to go to day monsters, and this is where I'm going to set my monster types that can be on the screen, and I'm going to set my palettes. Our hero uses player palette 0 and player palette 1. So he should have blonde hair and a green shirt. Our monster in this case uses the alien palette, and he uses sub palette 3. If I press OK, we can see that our hero has updated his colors, and now I can place up to 4 monsters on the screen. If I right click, place monster 1, place the alien. Right click down here, place monster 2, and place an alien. Right click here, place monster 3, and place an alien. Now when I test my game, if I run into an alien, it will restart the level, and I'll lose a life. So if I run into one, you can see I lost a life. And if I lose all my lives, the game starts over again. So now we just need to give our player a goal, and the goal is going to be to get to these gray rectangles, which is going to be my exit for the game, for the room. Real simple way to add a room that has all the same properties as this is I can go to my map, my overworld map, click on it, hit Control C, move to a different screen, click on it, hit Control V. Sometimes it's a little bit finicky. If it doesn't paste, try it again. Click on the screen, Control C, click on the new screen, Control V. I'm going to open it up. I'm going to clear all of my monsters by right-clicking and resetting all my monster placements. And just so I can tell that I've come to a different room, I'm going to clear out this middle section. So I'll get my tile number 1, and I'll clear this area out, and I'll go to my collision, and I'll choose null walkable, and I'll 0 that area out. Go back to my overworld, go to screen number 1. I need to know where this screen is located on the map. So if I click on overworld and I move my mouse over that screen, my screen is at 3-1, or 3-3, I'm sorry. And I want it to go to 4-3. This is the coordinates of the screen that I want to go to. So I'm going to open up my first screen here, and I want this screen to transition to 4-3. You'll have to look at your map to determine what screen it should jump to. I'm going to go to screen info, and you can see it says warp out screen. We said it was 4-3. Depending on where you have your screen, that'll determine what you put here. So we are telling it where to warp out to. Now on this screen, I need to tell it, where do I warp in to? So when it comes to this screen, what position does it show up at? Let's pretend I want it to show up right here at 5-5. I can go to screen info, and I can change my warp in screen location to 5-5. He should show up right here. I'll go back to my first screen. The last thing I need to do to make that work is I need to modify this so that it is not walkable, but instead is a warp tile. I could do the same thing where I click on this, hit 0, and paint it, or I can right click on that specific individual tile, modify the attribute, and change it to a warp tile. Now let's just make sure that that warp actually works. So export and test. That'll open the assembler. Press any key. Avoid your aliens. And get to the warp. And it does. Takes us to the second screen. Awesome. So that should give you a good start at making a maze game, taking that idea and making some sort of escalating threat, and you'll be able to create a cool little Pac-Man style maze game. If you'd like to continue on with this tutorial and see how this was put together, take a deeper look under the hood, that's what we're going to do in the next part of this tutorial. And then beyond that, we're going to take this and start thinking about how we can extend this and dig into the code and do other things beyond what this simple module can do. So that's what's next. Thanks for watching this. I hope this helped you get started creating a maze game with NESmaker.